Vanguard.
Greetings and salutations, like beautiful pixels. My name is Lucian Vrix. I'm the Bastion here at the Maelstrom Hold, and today we're doing another issue of Maelstrom Meets, where I, Lucian Vrix, sit down with game developers from all around the world to discuss the project that they pour their heart, soul, and passion into to just make the gaming world itself that much brighter. Today I'm joined with Jamie and Scott from CCP Games, and we're here discussing EVE Vanguard, and more specifically, Operation Nemesis, releasing later this month. How y'all doing today?
Doing very good. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I'm really excited to get my hands on this game. I've had a few attempts here and there as a member of the VIP community for EVE Vanguard, but I'm ready to dive on in for
Good.
Warp drive active.
For the first time, what is EVE Vanguard?
EVE Vanguard is an upcoming persistent sandbox FPS. It is leaning into what CCP do well, which are creating MMOs. So a big part of EVE Vanguard is that it exists in and is a part of the EVE Online universe. It is one universe. It is called New Eden. It is brilliant. It takes place 20,000 years in the future, so you can imagine the type of stuff that gets up to
21,000 years in the future.
21,000 years in the future. Just 1,000 years. Oh, you know, hit or miss. But yeah, 21,000 years in the future. And it's the idea that whilst in EVE Online, people are flying around in spaceships and impacting the universe that way. In EVE Vanguard, you are on the ground with gun in hand and impacting the universe that way. And the kind of the ripples across both those games are felt. We're in pre-alpha at the moment. We've announced that we're going into early access next summer. So there's still a lot of things that we are starting to build out and flesh out in the experience. But like, we just want to make, first off, just a kick-ass shooter. We want to make a really cool shooter in a really cool universe that everyone wants to play. There's a lot of games that have gotten quite close to scratching what is like an MMO FPS, and we feel that we are best equipped to really deliver on that vision of what does a massive multiplayer online FPS that leans into MMORPGs, not just shooters. What does that feel like? What does that look like in a universe that has, and you know, I feel very confident saying this, there are Guinness World Records on the walls in the Reykjavik office. This is the largest war in video game history. Being able to have a gun in your hand and take part in that, like, who the heck wouldn't want to?
So, with this connecting into EVE Online, would you consider EVE Vanguard a PvP game or PvE?
Pretty much both. We're describing it as like a PvEVP. You will be shooting a lot of NPC enemies in the environment as well, but there's the added pressure of other players in that environment. But we don't really want to restrict it one way. We're kind of leaning into making a game of games, how people like to play shooters. We want to create a game that allows them to all coexist within the same way, the kind of the same similar way in EVE, right? People play EVE in very, very different ways. And there are lots of different play styles and lots of different player types. We want to kind of make a shooter that does that as well. We're not just saying, no, this is the one way you play this game and you win this way and you lose that way. We kind of want to just create a playground that goes, look, if you want to just do PvE, go do PvE. If you just want to do high competitive PvP, go do that. If you just want to mine, look, you want to drop your weapons and go down and just do some mining, you can kind of go do that as well. But it all contributes to the same experience of everyone, right? It's all one big playground. Just how you play in it, we kind of want it to be up to you. What we've got right now is a PvEVP sandbox. So you go down, you're killing enemies, but there's that added threat of other players around you. But with Prox Chat now, you can either beg for your life or agree to work together or just try and scare them away. But we want to keep adding more features in to make it feel like it's not, the PvP isn't like see thing, shoot thing. Like, I want a moment of hesitation. If me and you, Lucian, we kind of met each other on the battlefield, there's a moment of like, hey, yeah, are we on the same side? Are we working together here, or am I going to lie to you?
Depends.
Help you and then
are you Caldari?
Yeah, exactly. So it's that kind of vibe we want, right?
I'm not gonna lie to you. In my 20 years almost of EVE Online, I am a self-hating Amarian who has sworn allegiance to the Caldari Navy. So
you still get to fly the coolest looking ships then, just the Caldari, is that it? Yeah.
I get all the glory of being a Marian with all the easy combat of using missiles. So
Nice.
I've heard it discussed a few times in the Discord. Can you elaborate on the mingle player?
Yeah, I wouldn't to say like there's a trademark we've come up with, but it's the idea in certain situations where we want players to be able to play with each other, but we don't necessarily want some of the overbearing pressures that happen with PvP. So there are certain elements of our experience, especially in our new player journey, where you're playing with other players, but you can't kill each other. So we kind of want to put you in that multiplayer space, but we kind of want to create a better environment to allow you to collaborate more without feeling, because it is natural. It's natural with a gun in your hands, you see another player running around, you do just want to kill them. So how can we create more ways to allow a bit more of a collaborative social aspect to that? So there are certain deployments, like I said, especially in our new player journey, where you'll be with other people, but you'll be encouraged to work together.
Okay.
Yeah, because we found, like, in the office, and I'm one of these people, by the way, there's a bunch of people in the office who actually like to play the game when we're not playtesting as a group, because you can sort of go down, do your own thing, you don't have to worry about being assassinated by some sweaty, awesome FPS player that's just over the hill. You can do some mining, you can do some contracts, and it's a lot more chilled, and that's how I like to play the game. And so, yeah, we talking about that and being like, well, we should make that a thing in the actual game, so people that like that can do it. Because otherwise, like what I found, I remember when we went live with one of our previous public playtests, is that the game became infinitely more stressful for me as someone who likes like Valheim and things like that.
I love Valheim.
Yeah, so like, yeah, trying to sort of accommodate different play styles is something that we're going to start doing more and more.
So while you're playing with your friends, how large are the squads you can have when deploying?
So it's 3 at the moment is our current squad size, but what I'm hoping will happen when we've got prox chat in the game is you start to get pseudo squads. Like what I used to do this in PUBG all the time. All of my friends we found out there was a way that we could all end up in the same deployment together. But what we'd do is we'd then identify each other by just jumping around, and then we'd group up. And then before you know it, you've got 10 people, where the squad size is only 3, you've got 10 people moving around a map together. So I'm thinking we want to keep pushing at the idea of the social connections that we can build. We've got 3 as the squad size in at the moment, but we're hoping with the features that we're starting to add in, people can maybe start making these little pseudo organizations. People used to do it in Dust all the time, right? People used to, make it, everyone clicks matchmake at the same time, and we'll all end up on the same server, and then we'll figure out who's who, and then we can do some faction warfare, right?
Oh, definitely.
So those are the kind of things we don't want to leave up to chance. We don't want people having to press matchmake at the same time. If we can build systems that allows people to connect together and start to build those connections, that's the ideal, really.
So to make these pseudo squads, as you said, how many are allowed to play on the same map at once?
So the maximum number of real players on a server at the moment is, I think it's around 21.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can have a 21-man party. But you're always going to have one outlier who just wants to try and kill everyone.
Pick me!
Yeah.
I mean, 1 versus 20, I like the mods.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of games out there that are famous right now. Cycle Frontier in the past, Helldivers 2, Space Marine 2. A lot of extraction shooters out there. How will Vanguard stand out against them in the genre?
Yeah, I think the way in which we want to push this beyond just an extraction shooter, I think a lot of what we've got in the game right now, if you did squint at it, we share some of those features. You do deploy down to a surface, you grab some stuff, and then you want to try and extract with it. But beyond that, and how we're not looking at like extraction shooters for inspiration in how we improve the game. We're looking at games like EVE Online and World of Warcraft, and we're going, right, like how do we build? Well, pick your favorite MMORPG. For me personally, it's Final Fantasy 14. That's
EVE Online for me.
Oh, okay, there we go.
It was my first MMO, and it will be the last MMO I play.
Yeah, you'll never stop playing. Well, it's EVE Forever. That's it.
EVE Forever,
but,
every day.
We're looking at those games. I think that's the kind of where we're moving to next in terms of the type of play styles that we want to have. We're moving away from like the mode, which a lot of extraction shooters kind of go on. They have this single player mode that kind of dictates itself whether you win or lose. And the progression that you have as a player is very single player. It's very, what loot do I have? How do I upgrade my character? We want to move into like multiplayer progression. You know, the idea of bastions that we talked about at FanFest, where we're starting to create hubs within the actual universe of New Eden, where players will start to congregate and eventually even walk around these places. These for me are like towns in an MMORPG. These are like where you are makes a difference. You have specific quest givers that give you specific, objectives. You have specific groups of players. The planets that you deploy to are specific for that place, like a PvE raid or a PvP competitive match. It's all about that point in space. But they also have their own metas, right? A bastion in Minmatar space and a bastion in Kaderi space may have completely different resources that they have access to. Maybe ballistic weapons don't really work in this part of space because we don't really have the resources to be able to make ballistic weapons. So energy weapons are really rife over here, ballistic weapons are really rife over here, and you've got this holistic view of the universe. A lot of the games that we are competing with, or a lot of games that players will consider ourselves competing with, that is kind of where we're pushing it towards. Is we're I keep talking about Destiny 2, and people keep talking about World of Warcraft and EVE Online, and these are the references that we're pulling on and how we're going to make this multiplayer game, rather than looking towards Tarkov and looking towards Helldivers. And it's not to say they're not bad game, they're not good games. They are fantastic games, and there's a lot in that experience that we'll draw from. But where we want to push Vanguard is that it does feel like a more of an MMO, more so than I think a lot of other games on the market at the moment.
In the past have been several different projects to change the direction of EVE Online. Between Valkyrie, Gunjack, and Dust 514, is Vanguard going to take any inspiration from the successes and some of the failures from those developments going forward?
Yeah, massively. I think Dust is in our blood as a project. My boss, the EP of the franchise, CCP Rotati, worked on Dust all the way back in the day and worked on a lot of projects to try and get that FPS project moving at CCP. It is really in what we want to try and to achieve here, and even some of the nostalgia that we want to try and hint at, some of the experiences that we make. Our community that we're building this game along with are built up from a core of a lot of Dust fans as well, that really want to see some of what they loved about that game reignited in something with a fresher take on it and a bit more modern, that can coexist in the EVE Online universe in a much stronger way than Dust ever did. I think as well the attitude across not just the team in London but the team in Reykjavik as well, is to how we build this out and how we build this, it's one universe, one war, even though there are two games. I think it's really great how both the Vanguard team and the EVE Online team are thinking about how these two games can coexist to create this rich universe, and that has been born from the successes and the failures in the past, to really have New Eden as this universe that a lot of different experiences tap into.
What is the dream goal for Vanguard? What is the end game you'll wish to achieve?
God knows what my dream goal there.
He every day he's pinging me about different features in the game that he wants to see that aren't currently there. Cough, cough, vehicles. But for me, there was a moment when I was at my first FanFest a couple of years ago when we announced Vanguard. I'd never done anything like that before, and there was a moment a fan came up to me after we announced the game, and they were like, "Oh, dude, that was brilliant. I really liked what you see there." He goes, "For me, this feels like EVE 20 years ago again, like getting in on the ground floor." And he goes, "I really hope we meet each other again in 20 years going, Vanguard, 20 years, remember when?" And I think for me, the same journey that EVE has been on, building with this community and getting to being 20 years and beyond now, my dream is for us to be in that same position in 20 years time. We're looking at this this universe and we're looking at Vanguard and we're going, look how far we've come and look how we've grown with this community.
I'll change it up a bit and be a bit more and come up with a specific thing. There's a bunch of things I'm really excited about that are coming recently. Like, Bastions are going to just be awesome. And to get back to what you were saying about some of these other games, it's like Bastions is like a layer on top of all the sort of game mode mechanics that we may have that sort of explodes it out into this sort of huge RPG game where you can sort of travel the galaxy, visiting these different towns and expanding territory and fighting battles and influencing the EVE game in ways that we've sort of yet to sort of like fully discover. But so I think like that's really exciting of just of being on that journey. But I have a few sort of like things I would love to see. I'd love to see vehicles, same as George. I'd love to see Vanguard mages one day. Would be really exciting.
Vanguard mages.
Like techno mages would be awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, because there's no magic, right? There's no magic in New Eden.
No.
But the idea of this tech, like almost like a tech priest kind of.
Yeah, just be super awesome. And the thing is that there's really sort of there's sort of no limit to the kinds of things that we can do, and the places that we can take it, because the goal is so sort of long term and so big. There's sort of like vehicles are possible. Flying vehicles are possible. It's like we can kind of take the game wherever we want to ultimately. But techno mages would be awesome.
George, you have your hand up.
I do. I just want to say, in very real terms, one of the things, there is a very nice moment as part of the development process for the game where there are town halls. What are the town halls? Like once a month, once every 2 months, where everybody who's involved in making the game gets together and gets to have Q&As and shoot the shit with the game's senior leadership team. And there's even a space in that call for ideation, which is a very lovely and open and collaborative moment, and it just makes the whole process feel joyous and creative. One of the things that is always paramount, though, is we want to fulfill some of the ambitions that Dust had but was unable to fulfill, due to its its limited time as a live game. And I think that means lots of different things, but we are that fantasy, the fantasy that Dust gave of this, a boots on the ground, down the barrel of a gun vision of the EVE universe is something that we really want to fulfill with Vanguard in the fullness of time. I believe someone on the dev team said that it's like the universe is trying to will an EVE FPS into existence, and we want to grapple with that and and charge forwards with it and ensure that when people look at Vanguard, there is no aspect of it that feels that it wasn't doing its very best to fulfill that vision in its totality.
So on September 16th, Operation Nemesis goes live, bringing EVE Vanguard back to the hands of the players who are so excited to play it. But what exactly is Operation Nemesis?
So for us, it's the state of New Eden is constantly in war, right? This is the next battle. For those that want a gun in their hands and they want to fight, this is the next battle. We are, I'm going to use a Dungeons & Dragons term, so apologise to anyone who doesn't know this term, but if Early Access next year is our Session 1, this is our Session 0. This is where we're kind of laying a lot of the groundwork. There's a lot of the narrative that starts to come through. We're introducing you to the ideas of how you came to be as a war clone and the world that you're entering, and we're starting to showcase that war in a far more kind of complete representation of the vision of the game that we want to build. So there is a new player journey that players will be going through that's going to introduce them to the universe, introduce them to the concepts of themselves, how they came to be, the players that play here, but also the narrative that's going to start to grow moving forwards. But we've also basically got the best representation of the kind of the loop that players will be playing through in the game. We've got expeditions, which is a new feature that allows players to take on basically work orders from the different factions and organizations within EVE. You can take a work order from Kandari if you really want, Lucian. And within that, there is a bit of a narrative in itself. Kandari are reaching out to you as a mercenary to carry out a particular piece of work because there's something that they want, there's something they want to dig into, and you get to complete objectives for them and earn rewards. And outside of that is also just grow yourself in power. Then we've got new weapons added to the game. We've got lots of new enemies to shoot at and be shot by. So it's really about kind of getting into that universe, starting to live off a little bits of these narratives, get your weapons, build your power, and just get stuck in, really. And it's the tightest that it's felt before in a lot of previous events. The game has felt like we've been introducing some kind of experiments here and experiments there. This is the first time it really feels like we're building towards that total package of the game, and this is that introduction into that.
Okay. So from downloading the game to our first deployment, what can players expect?
Yeah, so we've made a 90-second sort of rippomatic trailer that introduces a little bit of sort of narrative context about the current the situation that the Vanguard are coming into, and then the actual specific conflict that you're entering in the first deployment. We're going to change this to a much improved version in the future, but we're just like Scott said, starting to kind of sketch out our sort of narrative. But yeah, so we've got this 90-second trailer, and then we've also added in an insertion sequence. So now when players deploy in Vanguard, we used to just like fade up into the sessions, but now we've got this drop pod sequence that comes down from the upper atmosphere, and then as you break through the atmosphere, like busts open, and you sort of free fall down and sort of hero slam into the ground, and it's very sort of cool and dramatic. Again, that's going to get improved as we continue with development, but we're just again starting to sort of raise the sort of a quality bar, and sort of really get some of our intent down when it comes to like feel and tone and genre and stuff. On top of the mechanics that we sort of demonstrated in the past.
We've been adding in like a bit of what we call juice and spectacle into places as well. So, we've got some...
You've got a special word for that.
Peggle. An old creative director I worked for always called it Peggle. Admiral Peggle. If you've ever played the game Peggle,
I love Peggle.
It's just,
The announcement for Peggle 2 remains my favourite video game announcement of all time.
Really?
Go back and look at the Peggle 2 announcement video.
Yeah. But yes, so we've added in, there's now voiceover. We now have actual characters speaking to you. You don't realise how much of a difference actually just having someone speak to you, or with people that you're interacting with, where we've got one activity which is about smuggling contraband into an RDV, and you actually got the pilot of the RDV communicating with you now about, enemies dropping in, and, that you're doing a great job. It's sometimes nice to get a little pat on the back every now and then, but you'll be watching a couple of MCCs fight in low orbit and blow each other up. You've got some ships that from EVE Online that a lot of people don't realise are as big as they are as when you see them so close up, flying over you as well. So there's just a bit of spectacle and universe and world building that we've added into the experience that we haven't really had the time to add before.
So you mentioned the new player experience. Outside of the cinematic and the drop pod sequence, and of course the voice acting that talks you through it, what else can we expect from the new player experience?
I think just getting you grounded into not just the universe, but some of the mechanics in the game. I think much like any CCP game, we've got a lot of depth in how systems work. Our weapon customization is very deep. We've got the expedition systems, which is a more strategic way and gives you a lot more agency on how you take on objectives. So we do have to introduce people to that system. We really saw in Groundbreak, where was the event that we ran in November last year. We added a lot of systems to the game, but we didn't really tutorialize them or explain a lot to people them, and I think some people got a little lost in the depth. So one of the things that new player journey is really there to do is to not just while you're running around with a gun, but when you're in the menus and you're interacting with weapon customization, that you're also getting kind of talked through the concepts of that as well. So we have 3 different deployments that you do as part of the new player journey. The one that's kind of the big sizzle reel, you deploy down. It's a single player mission that you'll do by yourself, and there's a narrative there about taking down a grapple tower that's holding a ship in stasis. The second mission kind of introduces you a little into the idea of the sandbox. There are multiple different objectives and contracts that you can take on, and so you have to kind of find through the environment a bit more, and that's more PvE driven. And then we have our contraband deployment, which is that mingle player, where we want groups of players as part of that new player journey to be working together to smuggle potentially Jove relics off world to help certain organizations.
Okay.
Yeah, there's few things in life more frustrating than watching a Twitch stream of someone saying like, I wish this game had an inventory, and you're like, we do have an inventory, we just didn't tell you where it is. And you're just like, yeah, we made this game that, what we realized at the end of last week was that the game was a lot bigger, I think, than we thought, than it felt like to us, and we spent a lot of time in this last development cycle just making sure we were teaching people how to play things, making things a bit more intuitive, making things easier to use, a lot of like nice sort of quality of life things. But yeah, just really sort of, we tried to pull away from like really hand-holding people, but, introducing the features in a sort of in an ordered, sequential way, showing people how to use them. So at the end of that new player journey, you really know how to play the game, and you can sort of go into the sandbox with all the tools that you need to sort of play the game and give ourselves and players the best chance of really getting into it and having fun.
Will Operation Nemesis be connected to EVE Online and the whole sandbox?
Yeah, so we've always been experimenting with different links. Like in events up to now, we've had the Insurgency link, where players who compete in our 9v9 Insurgency mode were generating corruption or suppression in active insurgencies. We've kind of stepped away from that just now, just kind of cooled that down to experiment with another link. So players in EVE Vanguard who complete expedition objectives, so all players should be doing that. This is how you earn extra rewards. It's even how you earn the first bunch of weapons that you can have access to in Vanguard as well. Completing those objectives will update an event tracker that all players in EVE Online will see. And for every objective that's completed in EVE Vanguard, a little wheel will fill up, and when that wheel fills up, a convoy in both low sec, null sec, and high sec will appear in a random system that players can go and fight and blow up and fight each other for, and that convoy will drop some pretty juicy rewards, including plex, skill injectors, and implants. And every time that wheel fills up from people completing objectives in EVE Vanguard, a new convoy will be spawned. So the more people, the more objectives that are completed in Vanguard, the more convoys will spawn in EVE Online.
That is fantastic. Y'all just want murder to happen, don't you? Dropping plex.
Oh, yeah. We want people to be fighting over those things.
That's not even shaking the snow globe. That's throwing it against the wall.
Yeah, I think it's for us wanting to see and pushing and pulling at that impact. It might be too strong and we have to dial it down, but that's something we'll learn, right? But I think we want to see first and foremost about generating that impact and about mobilizing people in EVE Vanguard to get some sweet goodies and some fights going in EVE Online.
So you've mentioned a few times customization within the game. Can you elaborate how far we'll be able to customize during Operation Nemesis, or how far you plan customization to go within early access?
Yeah, so there isn't any kind of cosmetic customization in the game at the moment, but that's something we want to move forward to. As far as customization goes for Operation Nemesis, it's going to be focused on your gun and the type of gameplay that you want from that, and also the equipment that you make for yourself that goes down. I think already people are starting to generate kind of soft roles, like, here's my mining loadout, here's, I put down a couple of motion detectors so I don't get ganked, and here's my mining laser with all of the different chipsets on it, here's my more aggressive loadout, I've got, more equipment that's focused on deploying shields, and my weapon is more akin to hunting people down, or long range or short range, that kind of thing. But moving forwards into early access and beyond, suit modification is something that we want to reach into, but also expressing and building player cosmetics. We want people first and foremost to kind of show their allegiances and have that be a visual representative of the character, and whether that's information overlaid, but also how that may be represented on the suit. So you don't have to just rely on asking questions. Are you Kaldari or not? You might be able to see that first and foremost based on kind of the revelry that people are wearing into combat. But those are things that we're going to be pushing for whilst we're in early access.
Oh, but I was just going to say, Scott, we do have, the one thing that we do have is skins for our weapons. So yeah, so when there's a new one that's been introduced. I can't remember what players that have it would have already earned it, I think, from one of the previous playtests. And then one thing that's new in this game that players can build is a faction variant weapon. We don't say what it is.
Oh yeah, it's the Garistas one, right?
Yeah,
I love
so
the
we've
Garistas.
got a Garistas faction variant weapon in the game. So yeah, so you can't sort of change the look of it or customize it, but you can customize your weapon to one of, I think we've got 4 skins now in the game. So yeah.
Dust 514. The different factions had different suits, different suit classes, and between all of them, all 12 variants had different medium, high, and low slots. Will a feature like that be available within Vanguard, either now or planned in the future?
Yeah, so it will be something that comes in during early access, but we do want different suits. We're working on the idea of different suit classes at the moment, so this won't be in for Operation Nemesis, but something that will be in during early access. The idea of a light suit, a medium suit, maybe even heavy suits, they have different things that they're good at. You know, light suits are going to be more nimble, and the way that you upgrade them will be a bit more about scouting and leaning into that playstyle, whilst the heavy suit is going to be a bit more about, you know, tanking damage or being haulage and just being able to carry loads. But that is something that we want to have as a core part of the experience, is that the first choice you make about how you want to play the game starts with your suit. And we're first going to build out the Vanguard suits, but we want to extend that into different classes. I'd love to see what a Minmatar heavy suit looks like, or a Kaldari light frame. But that is where we're working towards at the moment, and players will be able to modify under the surface as well the different modules that they can have on their suit to kind of move them left or right of certain playstyles. But you're not going to be able to pick a heavy suit and then be super nimble and fast. You're going to be, a heavy clunker that's people are going to see from quite far off.
Okay. How many maps will we see during Operation Nemesis?
We'll have the 4 sandbox maps that people can deploy down to, and a brand new map for the 9v9 insurgency.
Wonderful, wonderful. Which one's your favorite?
Honestly, that new insurgency map.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a bit grey box. So it's one of our new level designers kind of built this up in a way that, like, a really good expression of how combat can work in the game, like competitive combat. So there's a lot more undulation, there's a lot more kind of interiors and exterior spaces. There's even a secret tunnel that takes you from one place to the other that I like to just hide in and kill people as they think they're being sneaky, and I'm just there with a shotgun waiting for them. But that new space, along with all the new weapons that we have, it just feels really, really good to play in.
Also, the first deployment is technically a new map, I guess. That was completely made. So the first mission that you play, the first deployment, is a completely sort of custom built, almost like a single player campaign map, right, Scott? It's quite sort of linear, but as in it's sort of taking you through the different sections. It's not like a big open sandbox like the rest of the game. And we chose that so because we want to kind of curate a little bit experiences and make sure that we're sort of teaching players things in a controlled way. But that's like a brand new map that no one except very few VIPs have ever seen before. So there's 5 big new experiences.
So you mentioned factions, and since the game's actually taking place within New Eden itself, and New Eden is just a sugar bowl of different factions, both non-player character and player character, will we see a lot of different factions during Operation Nemesis, whether joining them, playing as them, or killing them?
Yeah. So in terms of like who you can actually kill, it's so the primary enemies are Morty's Legion fighters. And we've got some not final but updated sort of 3D art on those, so they look way cooler than they have in the
They
previous
do not
releases.
look like Teletubbies anymore. They do
don't
not look
like
like
Teletubbies,
bright
which
green, yellow, red
Yeah.
Teletubbies running around. Yeah.
big step forward. But what we've started to do with the expeditions, which are like Scott was saying, like multi-session missions, basically, is start to introduce some of the sort of like some faction-based storytelling, and we've started to sort of like seed some of the big narrative that's coming in the future around bastions, and so how are bastions structured, for example, how are they led, and who's building them, or who's the main faction that's building one, and how are other factions reacting to this. We're starting to get into all of that sort of like juicy narrative, and that's sort of going to form the narrative base of early access. So if you're a bit of a lore person and interested in the narrative, and chances are this will be the only chance people have to play these expeditions as well. Like, chances are after this release we'll replace them with new ones. So if you're someone who's interested in the story and really understanding the story in real time from the beginning, then you've got to get in and play all the expeditions.
Even the Dust story as well. What happened after Dust shut down with the Accords? There's some nice little references to some of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're interested in all that stuff and that lore and what's happened between Templar 1 and Dust and now, then there's some cool bits of information and story in the expeditions.
We've talked a lot about hunting down, killing, hiding in secret tunnels, and shooting people in the back when they're least expecting. But for the dirty, filthy, nasty Care Bears of the New Eden universe, is there anything that might interest them?
Yeah, well, like
I could have been nicer when I said that, but
no, it's okay. Support play is something that's naturally starting to happen a little bit in squad play now. We've got more tools and deployables that people can make that can kind of fit a bit more into that supporting play style. But that is something we want to flesh out a bit more. When we look at play styles in the game, the ones that just want to run around and kill people are very highly served at the moment. The ones that want to industrialize, we've got ways for them to industrialize, but there's ways we can really lean more into that. But the type of play styles that we really want to, especially through early access, to really kind of lift up are those supporting players and the kind of the more exploration play. That kind of lone wolf explorer scout type, and that more I'm part of a squad, but I'm not really on the front line, but I'm helping, bit kind of logy, right? We kind of want to lean a little more into those play styles moving forwards.
Okay. So you'll be able to salvage, scan out new areas, mine, craft, I imagine.
Yeah, hope so as well. Yeah, stuff like that. We've always talked about, like the discovery of resources, and maybe even having finder's rights on people that mine it and sell it, and stuff like that. Yeah. So some really cool ideas that we want to play with to really kind of lift up that exploration is a thing, especially as well when we get into the realms of kind of player-owned bastions, which is something that will come in during early access, and the idea that players can build bastions anywhere in space that they want, and then they can start fighting each other, and you start having PvP. You start having bastion PvP, people going out and finding new planets that have certain resources that might help in the war fight is going to be really important.
Before early access, or even after early access, will there be other events like Operation Nemesis that further the story and everything?
Yeah, so when we go into early access, we'll be live 24/7, so we won't be releasing periodically like we have been, but there will be narrative arcs that we work in, and there'll be certain events that we run, and that'll be building up. So one of the first things we want to start playing around with is that on day one of early access is building up that narrative of what's going to be the big next narrative event, as we add more bastions to the universe as well, and having narrative reasons as to why those bastions now exist. Or when we add in player owned bastions, how does that come about? We want a narrative. We don't just want to drop a feature in. We want to have the narrative reason as to why that might exist in the world, and building that up from day one of early access is going to be really important.
That Scott and I have been talking about recently actually is in a game that is kind of 24/7 persistent, how do you create these punctuation moments, these like, you know, moments of like meaning and like crescendos of action, you know. And I think, you know, narrative is one of the ways that we're going to, you know, try and do that, create these events that people care about, that people kind of buy into and want to engage with. And then, you know, we can then sort of like, you know, and because we are thinking like long term about this and connecting the introduction of new mechanics like, you know, player owned bastions into the narrative, it means that, you know, or at least the goal is that then when those things come in, they're even more meaningful because it's connected to this narrative that you're brought into and engaging with every day, you know. And then once we have player owned bastions, that's kind of when a lot of the narrative then gets handed over to all of you guys who are playing it, you know, and then it starts to become like emergent, and then we become a bit more like sort of DMs, to go back into some D&D stuff. You know, we become more like DMs at that point, you know, where we can obviously always control the NPC bastions, but the player controlled bastions, we have no control over those. So it's like, that's when that's like, to go back to your question about what's most exciting, I think that actually is the thing I'm most excited about, is that moment, that threshold moment where like the first player makes their own bastion, and then the game kind of
Takes off.
sails off. Yeah, like, and then we're kind of reacting to at that point, you know.
Are you a little like, maybe
are
you a little worried about what the players might do with it? Because you can't prepare for every endeavor.
You know, I mean, you know, I've definitely played enough D&D to know that it's usually fun, you know. You know, it's like, yeah, it's like you just yes and it all, right? Like, it's like, you know, the improv like 101. It's like whatever players decide to do, it's like, all right, cool, we're going. You know, you don't want to go into D and you want to talk to the mushroom next to the door. All right, that's what does the mushroom say?
Will progress carry over from Operation Nemesis?
No, there'll likely be a reset before we go into early access. So it will be prudent to earn as much as you can in Operation Nemesis to experience that content and have fun with it. But it's very likely when we start early access, that will be the fresh start.
Okay, and of course, once early access starts, the fresh start, it's live 24/7. Take it and run with it.
Yes, we are very much hoping, but there is an asterisk next to it in case of dire situations. But we're hoping as soon as we start early access that we won't need to do any resets. Even coming out of early access, we'd like everyone that was in it to carry their progression forwards into full launch, version 1.0.
So I guess the only question I have left is, when can we play Operation Nemesis and where can we play it? And of course, how?
Yes, so you can play it from September 16th, and if you have access to the EVE launcher, you will be able to play EVE Vanguard. EVE Vanguard is already listed on the EVE launcher, but you'll be able to start downloading the game pre the 16th, and then the gates will open. Anyone can play, it's free to play, all you need is the EVE launcher and a machine capable of running Unreal 5 at a decent enough level.
Thank you so much, Scott Davis and Jamie, and of course, Mr. George over there, who was keeping a careful eye on the picture. We didn't say anything wasn't supposed to be said. Thank you for talking to us today. Oh, there he is. Thank you for talking to us today about EVE Vanguard. I'm super excited to play it. We'll be showcasing the gameplay of it as soon as it goes live, September 16th, on all of our platforms, whether on Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, and our own website, maelstromhold.com. I've been Lucian Vrix, the Bastion, no relation to Vanguard. That's a whole name that's been around for a very long time. And we're going to go ahead and see y'all next time.